We now move on to our first panel discussion for today to discuss revolutionizing document analysis and natural language processing. Joining us on the panel are Mr. Vahe Andonians, founder of Cognize, Dr. Hrant Khachaturian, director of Yerevan N, Mr. Aram Aghababian, co-founder at CaseLens, Ms. Pushan Sharma, application developer at IBM and mentor and advocate for women in tech, Mr. Dimitri Mun, deputy chairman of National Information Technology. Our moderator for this discussion will be Mr. Fritz Busmaker, a business community builder with a passion for bridging people together in the digital age.
Yeah, you take that seat. Good morning, everybody. Oh, good morning, good afternoon. Apologize, I'm still on Dutch time. I'm Fritz Busmaker. I chair the Institute for Accountability in the Digital Age, and I'm honored to moderate this panel on document analysis and natural large language modeling and processing. Before we go into discussion, I very briefly would like to put a face to the names you just mentioned. Punya, can you please briefly introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Deputy Chairman of an operator of e-government in Kazakhstan.
Okay. Rand.
I'm a research lead at Yerevan and Yerevan State University doing AI research for robotics and biotech.
Okay, and last but not least, Aram.
Hi everyone, I'm the co-founder of CaseLens.
Okay. Everybody, in this session we're going to cover the usage of LLMs, but also the concerns our panel members have. But before we go into the discussion on its applications and concerns, I actually want to ask Rand first to give us a definition of an LLM, so we're all on the same page when we talk about this topic. Could you give us a brief statement of the definition?
Sure. LLM is a large language model, a large type of a neural network. It's a weird type of a neural network which is designed to be extremely simple, so its objective function is very simple. It just wants to predict the next word in the text. And apparently, this simplicity gives it the power so that you can give it an infinite amount of text. And nowadays, people learned how to give it terabytes of text. And then these language models learn to predict the next word, which apparently is enough to be able to then answer questions, translate text, do some sort of reasoning, and so on. And the power of LLMs comes from the fact that people learned how to scale them. Apparently, this is probably the first type of a neural network for which we can scale it almost indefinitely. It turns out that if you add neurons and connections to these neural networks, they just get better. And it does not plateau so far as we know. So this allowed this revolution of ChatGPTs and other agents that can understand text and do some text analysis that 5 years before was seeming impossible.
Okay, Ram, thank you very much. So that's the theory. Let's put it into practice. And I first want to ask Aram, can you give an example of what your company is doing with LLMs?
Sure, Fritz. Thanks, everyone. At CaseLens, we actually work with legal industry. So in the legal industry, as many of you know, it's entirely text. Maybe in the movies you might see some lawyers arguing in the courtroom, but in fact 80% of their work is actually reading documents, writing documents, fairly something LLMs can automate easily. At CaseLens we deploy AI agents on large document sets to help lawyers to understand the facts of the case better. And there is a saying, if you know the facts, you know the case. So we are trying to achieve that with the power of LLMs and natural language processing.
Okay, thank you. This actually is related to, Dimitri, what you're doing with the Ministry of Kazakhstan. Maybe you can share with us how you use it within your ministry.
Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. First use case, we manage over 100 terabytes of documents between governmental agencies, and our MVP AI assistant helps civil servants find the right correspondence and orders quickly. This reduces the risk of missing important tasks, saves times, and enhances overall efficiency. The second one, each year we handle over 2.5 million citizens' appeals. AI helps analyze the tone, identify emergent issues across regions, districts, and correctly navigate to a relevant state agency. This makes it easier for civil servants to respond quickly and effectively. Also, we have processes over 150 government agencies reports using AI, creating an MVP tool that allows civil servants to find statistical answers through a simple chat interface. This speeds up the decision-making process by providing quick access to data insights.
Okay, hey, thank you for sharing that. Moving on, Puyan, how do you apply LLMs in your work?
All right, so basically it's kind of similar to what he mentioned in terms of employees having access to a lot of data and documentation. So at IBM, we have this very robust chatbot called AskHR. So every employee actually has a personal HR assistant in that sense.
Cool.
So it's powered by AI in the sense that if we have managers there, a manager might be managing 14, 15 employees. If he goes to the chatbot to be like, hey, can you let me know the compensation stat for all the employees I manage? It gives us a detailed data of what their compensation was like since they started and what the potential is for them to grow more. So a detailed documentation of each employee is presented to the manager. Even for an employee like myself, if I were to look into the chat, being like, hey, can you help me with this? How can I do this? So rather than asking people going around one person after another to get an answer, which takes days sometimes, that chatbot with the use of AI just gives us what we need instantaneously. So with that, it kind of made it very efficient in the company, and this is something that we're very happy that has happened. So it makes everything more efficient and has saved everyone's time.
Good.
By days.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's great.
Good. Okay, last but least, Fahey, what do you do in your organization with AI and LLMs?
So what we are doing is we are processing documents for the financial industry. The financial industry is very document heavy, and in the past it was really about having access to information, and I think this is changing to having access to the right information, because we have already too much information, so really getting the important points out of the bulk of data, basically, and that's what we're doing.
Great. Now, when we discussed and prepared this session yesterday, I was actually quite interested to see you have more concerns than opportunities in AI. And maybe you could share with us what the concerns you see with AI at the moment.
Well, I wouldn't say that I have more concerns, but I do have
Well,
serious
you have a lot of concerns.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think first we have to admit that we know almost nothing about LLMs. I mean, if you think about it, it took us 6 months to realize that GPT has in-context learning capabilities after it was released, which is the most important feature of an LLM. The godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, left the space with the words, "I don't understand what's happening." So I think we have to realize we know very little. The second thing that we need to realize is that there is an existential risk. And, you know, Bengio, Musk, you name it, a lot of people are talking about this existential risk. About 50% of scientists believe that we have an existential risk of about 10%, which is huge. Besides that, we also have a societal risk.
Yeah. By the way, can you explain to the audience who are maybe not familiar with that term, what you mean by an existential risk?
Well, existential risk basically means that humanity is, let me find a nice word to say killed. But
reduced?
Yeah, reduced to zero, let's put it this way. And the problem there is, of course, a problem which is known in literature as the genie problem. The genie will always do what you say and not what you want. So if you ask, for example, a supercomputer solve the environment problem, it might turn out that it can solve it by killing all humans because humans consume too much energy. That's, of course, a problem that you need to address somehow, and it's not trivial to address it.
Okay, now I was talking to somebody yesterday who said this is actually yesterday's issue, this existential risk. And I just want to go to the rest of the panel. Is it yesterday's discussion, or Do you share the concerns Faye expressed? Anybody? Rand?
Yeah, so I think that currently and in the foreseeable future, the AI tools will be used by people, and I see more existential risks in usage by people than existential risks that could come out of pure AI by itself, right? So if we believe about, if we think about, I don't know, killing a lot of people or having a catastrophic event, I think it will happen before AI gets so clever to do that on its own. I think people will do that with the use of AI way before AI is powerful enough to do it on its own. So I think we have to focus on people first.
Good.
Yeah.
Fuljan, I see you want to add to this.
I definitely want to add to this. So as he mentioned, like AI is driven by people. So what AI gets as its input is very contextual. Every data that AI is fed into, based on that data norm, is how the AI kind of flourishes. So it's likely to get the next predictable answer. Like what's the most predictable? What's the most likely? That's the output that the AI provides. So in essence, the output that AI gives is what we feed it. So the data norm that we have around the world is what builds the AI up. So some people mention bias in languages, bias in history, and a lot of things. There might be bias against people that existed that the AI has access to. Okay. So based on the thought that people have all around the world, that's how the general data is collated and built up, and that's what AI is resulting in. Yeah. So essentially, the essence of AI itself is the people, how we train it, how we make it work. So it's mostly like based on ethics at the end of the day, like how we use it, how we plan to train it. It's like raising a child from the get-go. If you're a nice parent who teaches your kid right from wrong, it will go on the right direction. So the ethics is the most important essence, is what I believe.
Okay. I see so you want to remark. This is going to be the final remark on an existential crisis. Otherwise, I want this audience to leave this session happy. And
of course,
we'll get positive news. So, okay, one.
But there are actually, I think, two problems. The first problem is that saying that it's trained on data that human created, and that's why it can't get out of it, is just not true. Because in reality, it wouldn't be able to create anything new if we would just repeat what has ever been repeated. And the second problem is, I think the second problem is that the weak link might be humans. GPT is now already mastering English better than humans on average are. And you know that people who actually were tasked with developing it and then testing it thought that it has a consciousness because it was answering so nice things. So it absolutely has the ability to influence people to do something bad. And I think these are all risks that we somewhat need to think about. But going to some better points here, good. I think that the third point is, of course, you have societal risks, right? I mean, we went now, I don't know how you count it, it doesn't matter, but maybe we call it the fourth industrial revolution. We went to 3 already, and none of them actually ended, all of them ended well, but none of them were easy along the time, right? I mean, the Luddites were bombing factories because they were afraid of those. We used to have 12-year-old children to go into woving machines and so on. So it's not a nice history that we have done, and I feel we might be just repeating this, and we need to prepare better. But now to the good things. You want to hear the good things, right? So I think the good things are that essentially all the things that we would like to solve in healthcare, for example, cancer, in environment problems and so on, all those will require in some shape or form AI. So I think it has a huge potential. We just need to manage it well to be able to harness that.
Yeah. So let's talk about indeed managing how to build a good LLM. And Aram, I want to come back to you. What do you see as the major challenges you have in developing an LLM?
Well, thank you for the question. Developing an LLM would be a hard task, especially for companies of our size. I think the biggest players that are out there already taking up that part of the value chain. What is remaining is right now to maybe develop LLM tools that are actually using LLMs in some extent, or else build applications with the LLMs for the specific industry, what we're actually trying to do. It will be really hard and resource intensive to build an LLM from scratch, and neither we have resources and maybe not even engineers in Armenia. But to use the LLMs to the extent necessary to kind of improve the processes for some business organizations, this is something of a great opportunity. And there are lots of places to innovate. So chatbots is one of the use cases, but this is just the beginning. So as most of you might already know, when ChatGPT came into existence, the GPT 3.0 model, which was essentially powering it, was out there for 6 or 7 months already. So there was lots of things to innovate over those period. But then the chatbot came into existence, and this is what actually people are trying to do. So coming back to the question, we definitely can improve the LLMs to tailor it to the specific industry use cases, such as legal, financial, healthcare. And the providers of LLMs are actually giving it some kind of open source, so you can, those are open weights, so you can adjust the weights, so fine-tune the LLMs to your specific needs. And you can always start with the smallest ones and then go to the industry well-known larger LLMs. And that brings lots of opportunities to the businesses and to the companies that are trying to innovate with LLMs.
Okay, thank you. Rand?
Yeah,
Coming back
I think
to you.
I agree.
What are
Unfortunately,
for you the top 3 challenges?
yeah, so I think when we're talking about these text-based LLMs, I absolutely agree with Aram that there will be, I don't know, maybe 5 companies in the world that will eventually work on those large LLMs, and the rest of us will be building on top of that. So these companies have their own challenges, and this is already getting relatively opaque, which is unfortunate. Like 3 years ago, the entire AI research was pretty transparent, and now it's getting more and more opaque. And what's happening, what challenges are facing the current teams at Google DeepMind and OpenAI, it's not really obvious to the rest of us. But then comes the layer on top of that. So all of us will take those LLMs developed by those big companies, and then the important challenge there would be to adapt it to our needs and actually create products on top of them. I think the biggest challenge we have right now is the user experience issue. So I usually give this example in the education, for example. So in many countries, including in Armenia, we have a shortage of experts, good teachers in the schools, right? And there are no good teachers that understand all the details of physics that can answer questions to students. But now the knowledge problem is essentially solved. So everyone has an expert in the pocket, right, that can answer all questions about physics and can explain physics to anyone. But then there is a UX issue, like how do you bring this into the classroom so that the students do not ask the teacher, but ask this one, or how can the teacher become an interface between the student and the AI, right? So we essentially solved the content problem, but we didn't solve the content delivery problem. And that's where I think a lot of innovation is going to happen in the next years, on how you build this knowledge and this reasoning capabilities that is almost freely available to everyone, to the market, to the actual users. And I think a lot of people on this panel are working on those things. The example that you gave, we just heard from IBM, is a pretty interesting one, right? Like, how do you bring this to solve the HR problems in the team? This is impressive, right? And I think that's the big challenge in terms of applications. There are challenges in the technical side as well, like all these issues of making things up, like hallucinations, what we call them, right? But again, some of these challenges are becoming problems of the main developers in those 5 big companies, right, in some sense. Because whatever we create now on the smaller scale will be much worse than even the worse models or less clever models of the big ones, because of these scaling laws, right? Yeah, there are many more things that I could cover, like the support for small languages and things like that, that are still a problem for us, like some of these biggest models that we have access to, for example, for Armenian, do not work well enough, although one of them is, I think, currently can be highlighted. That's the Claude of Anthropic, which is pretty good at Armenian. And yeah, as right now, due to this, we can plan creating our own language models on the smaller scale that would have focus on some small languages. But over time, again, these big ones will take over. So in the long term, I don't think it makes sense to invest much into that. So most probably, I don't know, the GPT-5 and Gemini 3 will cover all the languages better than every individualized language model on the smaller scale.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Poojan, I assume you can relate to the small languages because you originally come from Bhutan.
Yes. So I'm from Bhutan, and Bhutan's a country with a population of 700,000 with, let's say, 500,000 people actually speaking the national language and 400,000 people actually being able to read and write who are literate. So the use of languages is minimal, and we don't even have features like Google Translate covering it because it's just that small. So there are challenges for the future in terms of how you can use this, because English and Mandarin and Spanish are languages that are very predominant. So those are going to they're going to spearhead whatever is happening, but languages that are small, which don't have enough coverage, will always have a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's something that
Dimitri,
we need to look at training quite a bit in terms of AI, but there are concerns with AI in terms of training AI data as well. Because there's this thing called overfitting and fine-tuning too much. And once you do it too much, it will give you answers that you want, but it's not necessarily correct. So these are some concerns people have when working with AI that is kind of being looked at in a very deep level. For LLMs, it's general, but as you mentioned about hallucinations, they will exist. But for you to fix it, and if you train the AI in a certain way, you're losing the essence of the generalization, and it will be fine-tuned in a way that might not cover some other aspects of it. Has anyone heard about the strawberry hallucination effect at ChatGPT? Anyone? Yes, I can see someone raise their hand, and here as well. So hallucination is basically giving the wrong answer than what you expect. So in ChatGPT, someone types in how many letter R's are in a strawberry, and how many are there? It's 3, right? But ChatGPT always answers saying that it's 2. And we keep on probing it to give us the right answer, but it'll still say 2 because it's not programmed to actually calculate it completely. It's looking at the prediction and the pattern of what is there because it's trying to look at the most next likely thing, right? So it's not trained to do step-by-step processes. So even sometimes simple additions can be mistaken in terms of calculation from there. So how do we get away from that, but still get that essence of generalization is very hard to look into. So that's why hallucinations are a big topic of discussion in terms of AI that come up.
Now, you mentioned indeed that the most probable answer is given and not necessarily the right answer. It's the most likely answer. So maybe Aram, coming back to you because you work in the legal domain where people very much demand, I want it to be the exact answer, right or not. So how do you deal with the fact that the best result is the most likable answer, but not necessarily the absolute answer? How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, to be honest, legal has this problem, and this is pretty much predominant to any law firms that we are speaking to. They are really afraid of hallucinations, and this is a challenge for them. But just kind of to bring an example of a study that was conducted, recently someone did a study. They asked humans to do summary of case decisions, so for court decisions. And surprisingly, humans out-hallucinated LLMs. So essentially what they put as a summary was most of the times invented or kind of non-existent information as well. So just to know that this is something inherent to humans as well. If you want to really small down text to a small chunk, you might probably hallucinate as well. So this is just one of the examples. But otherwise, we always provide an option to cross-verify whatever they do. So instead of them going and checking the huge sets of documents to understand whether this is the correct answer, we just provide a button for them to verify the source and reduce the friction as much as possible. But hallucinations in legal are really important, I think, to consider. Even if you get a word wrong in the contract, you will have army of lawyers fighting for that word and interpreting that word from both sides and spending millions of dollars. So from my understanding, in legal, generating text is not the primary use case, but rather reading capabilities of LLM. So they can read and spot anything, and they are tireless. They can read 24 hours a day, and they will get results better than juniors or paralegals. Maybe they are not that bad and that good as partners or as senior associates working in the law firms, but still, if you can outsource kind of this task to an LLM, why not do that? Because most of the lawyer's task is reading a bunch of documents, and this is kind of 80% of their actual work and expenses in disputes.
Okay. Hey, thank you. Now I was wondering, Dimitri, if I might ask you the same question. Is that an issue for you, and how do you solve that? The most likely answer and getting the right answer, which I assume all your citizens would demand.
Yeah, for hallucinations, there are lots of approaches to kind of. It was.
Yeah, I was wondering, Dimitri, are you able to answer that question for Kazakhstan?
I think I absolutely agree with Aram, because we do like that. We share the source and link for our customers.
Okay, thank you.
Dimitri. I think there's a little bit of an inconsistency here. It is not going to answer the most likely answer. It is going to use the most likely token, which will not result in the most likely answer. It's a very different thing, because if it would always answer the most likely answer, it would be just like a Google search. It will always repeat the same thing, which is not doing, right? So it is predicting the next token, which is a part of a word, basically. And the idea behind it is that, or that what we are seeing right now is that with this simple thing, it can actually first build an understanding of concepts and then combine it to come to some meaningful new insight, basically, right? And I think that hallucinations are actually, and Hrant, I think, is also doing lots of research, has big opinions about this. I think hallucinations are one of the most important features of an LLM. Without hallucinations, it would be absolutely uninteresting to play with it. I think everybody experienced O1, which is much more interesting to deal with, which essentially has done much less of human preference fine-tuning, which results in exactly this, thinking more, reasoning more, and then answering also the strawberry questions, correct? Yeah. And that happens actually through hallucinations and not
good. So it's not all bad. That's good.
Yeah, just wanted to add, with hallucinations, if something's black and white, like how many numbers are in a strawberry, give me 1 + 1, you want the correct answer, right? But in terms of the creative process, like most of the people, like you want something unexpected has to happen for new ideas to be created. So with hallucination, it kind of supplements the learning, but if you tell ChatGPT to do your tax, of course it's not going to be able to do it, because it's like computational. You'd rather have a program deal with that rather than AI if it's generating something, right? So in that sense, like how you use AI in terms of that will be very beneficial. So that's why when he mentioned hallucinations are kind of it's like a bonus sometimes, like something that you don't expect. Like if strawberry issue wasn't there, like you would never find out about it. And it's always an interesting talk. And it's always something that you learn from. So learning is the most important aspect of it anyway. So that's
why you have failures and brilliant failures, and this is an example of a brilliant failures, which allows you to learn and progress.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Okay. Hey, I'm going to compress to a slightly different topic when it comes to challenges. Hrant, this is a question I'd like to ask you to answer. At the moment, we're assuming, at least I'm assuming, that the text or the language which we are using is text-based. We type it in, and then the engine does an assessment and gives us an answer. But I can imagine in the future we also will be assessing spoken language. What are the challenges once you try to assess spoken language?
Yeah, I think that's not a serious challenge anymore from like the research or academic point of view. So we learned to, you know, when we say that language models are trying to predict the next word, actually they don't care whether the next thing is a word or something else, right? There is this concept of a token that if any one of you have played with this ChatGPT through programmatic access, you would work with this concept of token. Currently, the tokens in the LLM world usually mean some combinations of words or characters. But for the mathematics point of view, the token can be anything, and it could be a piece of a sound or a voice or a piece of an image. And that's what the most recent versions of ChatGPT are doing, actually. So I think last week, the mobile apps of ChatGPT were updated to support this fully voice version of it. And it works the same way. It's still a language model. The language is like getting more and more less related to text. So there is this term problems we have. And now language means just a sequence of tokens. And these tokens could represent voice. And then you could train a model that can understand both text and audio and do the same reasoning and the same analysis that it has been doing for text.
One question before maybe Mpu, and you can also ask, because what I'm trying to get to is how can you combine words, song, and dance? So you could use the same word, interesting. Dependent on the context, depending on how you pronounce it, it has completely different meaning. Interesting is different from interesting.
Absolutely, and that's what you can teach as well, because if you take, I don't know, YouTube videos, you have a lot of text and a lot of audio that is talking about the same things or using the same words in different contexts with different intonation, with different stuff, and the model will learn it just like it learned with regular text, right? And it's already happening. My point is that if you use this mobile app of OpenAI, now you can see it work, and actually it's obvious that it is working in the sound space in a way that is not translatable to text. For example, I had a case last week where I talked to ChatGPT in Armenian, and it responded correctly in Armenian, and then by the end of the conversation, it gave me the transcription, and the transcription was wrong. So actually, the reasoning happened inside audio modality, and it was correct, but then it wanted to have a text version of it for my reference, and the conversion from audio from text to text was incorrect. This is already a sign that the reasoning and the processing of the data is happening in this audio modality already, right? So I think this is an important milestone that they have reached, and it's fascinating that it works for Armenian as well, by the way.
Okay, good to hear. Poon, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, so when he mentioned learning about the mistakes, so Gartner predicts that 30% of the AI projects by 2025 will be scrapped, basically. So people are experimenting, Gen AI, and you know, GPT-4 and GPT, it's been a boom for the public. So people are now leveraging every business idea using AI, and that's a great thing. But the 30% of the projects that have been canned are even more awesome in the sense that we know what's feasible, we know what's not feasible, and because the product or the idea they're exploring might not have worked in a certain field, it kind of paves way for something else, because a lot of the research that is done is with the probability, okay, this is not possible, how can we prove or make it happen? So when they learn from these projects, and the boom is high, so I feel like with how he just did an experiment with Armenian, it just shows that we've reached this point. So you kind of have a track of where you are at. AI didn't come just 2 years ago. We've been doing it and working on it for 70 years, and this is the product, and this is what you see nowadays. So it started from scratch, from machine learning, and now we're here. So it's only going to get better. So the only hope is that we learn more and more so we can existential crisis, we can avoid that. So that, you know, we can't risk human lives for the sake of experiments. So the ethics and everything else plays into it. So that's why I was like, learning, experimenting, that's what we do. Public can do it, anyone can. We have access to OpenAI. So you might as well do your own experiment. If you find something interesting, if you post about it, it might create the next buzz like strawberries. So the field is in our The ball is in our field, basically. So do what you may and learn from it.
Yeah. Okay, Fahey, do you recognize this? Are you learning, experimenting? Are you saying goodbye from initiatives already?
Yes, definitely, saying goodbye also. Yes, experimenting, learning, I think is the most important thing because, you know, this is not something we have created. We created an algorithm that then created itself.
Yep.
I think that Jeffrey Hinton is calling it now alien intelligence and not artificial intelligence because we really don't know what the capabilities are going to be. And we are experimenting with this, and Hrant is a very, very good scientist, and you see that he finds out new things, so all of us can find new things with using this. I think the point that you mentioned before about the meaning of the word is different in a different sentence, I think essentially that is what this self-attention solved in 2017 and paved the way for all these booms, because now if you look at the word Apple, GPT absolutely understands if you're talking about the computer company or you're talking about the fruit, and it understands it through the context like a human would.
Okay. Aram.
Sorry, what was the question?
In the development of your product and services, are you already seeing that you're learning things, and what are you saying goodbye to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. In the development process, you essentially learn from trial and error, and we have come across some use cases that are necessary to really experiment with actual data from law firms. And the biggest challenge is, of course, confidentiality, so they are not necessarily willing to agree on sharing the data, and you need to kind of do some tweaks, deploy something privately, keep the data on their premises, etc. But what we actually learned from our development process, when the multimodality came into existence from this, so instead of large language models, we got large multimodal models, which understand both text and images. That was a really kind of a groundbreaking thing for legal, because in legal you have lots of scanned documents. Sometimes you have like tilted scans, which like OCRs are not necessarily doing a good job to kind of decode. Sometimes you have like an A4 format where you have 4 pages like side by side, and this is like horrible. You really need to understand how to parse this. But large multimodal models with their image recognition capacity are really a change maker in that sphere. So you don't need to really use any OCR tools. You don't need to care about whether this is a non-readable PDF or a readable PDF. You just feed it into the model or the sequence of it, and you get the answer that you need. That's, I think, the most important thing we learned, and this is the best applications that we can do in legal document analysis.
Great, thank you. Dimitri, can I ask you to comment on how is the data insights and communication between the government and its citizens? Do you see maybe closing down some of the applications you offer right now, or speeding up? So are you experimenting and seeing what works or not, it doesn't work?
Yeah, okay. Let me share our experience. Over the past 5 years, we have created a national data lake that replicates 106 governmental database daily, and this allows us to analyze data efficiently, including digitizing all 6 million families in Kazakhstan. According to Alkire-Foster multi-poverty methodology and UNDP guidelines, we daily update 100 parameters about every family, including parameters regarding income, property, education, healthcare, loan debts, and others. We generate an online well-being score for every family in Kazakhstan every day, and the algorithm identifies families in need, like every night. AI generates text, and system delivers government assistance proactively via mobile phones, mobile applications, and SMS, eliminating the need for them to apply manually. For example, proactive payments on the birth of a child, death of family member and exemption of persons with disabilities from the army. Citizens no longer need to collect documents and apply for it in more than 37 life situations already. Over the past year, we delivered over 3.5 million services through this data-driven approach, which is called the digital family card. Also, we are testing an AI assistant that explains how to access our 1,000 automated government services online with simple questions about life situations in our eGov mobile application. And in the legal sector, we have developed an MVP AI chatbot that offers 24/7 legal advice to citizens in their eGov mobile application.
Thank you. Now, we have just roughly a little bit more than 5-6 minutes left for this panel discussion. Before I would like to end with everybody's closing statements to take away for the audience to bring back home. I want to have a very brief discussion on, so far we've talked about challenges from, okay, an application development perspective of what it can do. Are there any challenges from a legal and ethical aspect we have to take into account? Anybody have a first idea? Oh, Adam, you're first.
Yeah, being a lawyer myself, I will take this question as well. So, yeah, there are lots of challenges, especially with the GDPR. So recently, there was a study conducted by Hamburg Commissioner of Data Protection, and the question they were trying to answer whether large language models comply with GDPR. And the essence of the question is they were trying to understand whether they store data or they don't store data. Personally identifiable information. So they asked who is the president of United States, and it got the answer wrong. They did lots of kind of tests, and they understood, at least from their regulatory perspective, that large language models do not per se store personally identifiable information, but rather they can get this information through inputs, prompts, and through completions. And the place to regulate that GDPR comes in is what you're inputting into the large language model and what you're getting an output. And that's essentially where the personal identifiable information that falls under GDPR is existent. But LLMs, per se, the answer is that they don't contain personal identifiable information inside of them. I don't know how technically feasible, kind of sound this is, but this is their kind of conclusion. And yeah, Germany was behind the GDPR itself, so this is pretty weighty opinion in the legal industry and in the regulation.
Okay. Anybody want to jump in and add to the legal and ethical concerns?
I have a general feeling that the modern large AI models are born in California and will die in Europe because of all these questions and issues. So I think in practice, a lot of the problems with legal aspects of AI and responsibility can be solved by one trick that actually yesterday was mentioned on the other stage by Nubar Afeyan. So if you associate any decision made by AI to some human, so even if the decision was fully made by an AI, there has to be some human who signs under that. After that, this decision is going into force. Then you kind of throw this responsibility part to the person that actually trusted the AI. And that's how you kind of come to the current world situation where people are responsible for their actions, right? So I think we have to make sure that in most of those dangerous cases of AI applications, there is some person who is signing off, and that simple trick should be able to solve maybe, I don't know, half of the problems. But yeah, there will be another half of the problems that we don't even realize now, and I think it will take time before we figure out what are the challenges and what are the problems and whether there are relatively good solutions.
Okay, thank you for that. Hey, given the time, I'd like to go along the line. If everybody asks, okay, your final takeaway to the audience, combined with what your expectations are on LLM. And Veja, can I start with you?
Sure.
A brief statement.
Brief statement. I'll try to be brief. Well, I think the expectation is that at the end it will all be good if we survive this tale of difficulties. So we need to be, thinking a little bit about things that we are doing. And I think there are some first approaches into this direction that give hope, but I think we need to plan a little bit more before we really go all into this technology.
Okay, thank you. William.
I think my takeaway would be like, brakes do exist in cars. You're not accelerating all the time. So you take the time for safety and, people's lives, monetary values, the environment is important. So when you're experimenting with AI, a lot of stimulations are required. And, just don't jump to the next best idea and then dive into it and then there's a disaster. People need to take iterations one way or another and then slowly develop. 70 years results is now. We can't expect everything to be good in the next 5 years. We need to take time so that we prioritize what's important and then learn from it. So that's my takeaway from.
Okay, Dimitri, brief takeaway.
Yeah, I have one question. What do you think? Do you think when fire was first mined, many people were also worried that it would kill us?
Probably.
Okay. Comparing an LLM to fire, that's an interesting approach to end with, but I think I see why you're right, yeah. Rand, any final takeaway?
Yeah, I think one expectation that I want to raise here is that a lot of the great applications of AI will be in combination with other computer science-born tools in combination. For example, that's how DeepMind is solving mathematics Olympiad problems. When you have an LLM that generates or even hallucinates a mathematical solution, and then there is another module which is not an LLM that verifies the solution. Or in Codebase, you write a code with an LLM, and then there is a compiler that checks that the code is doing well, right? So in this kind of interactions with LLMs with some verifier tools, some of them could be also LLMs, but the best ones will not be LLMs. These combinations is where I expect the most economic value to be created in the next years.
Thank you. Aram, you have 9 seconds.
Yes, from my side, the takeaway would be that chatbot interfaces are going to evolve. So right now, this is the predominant use case, but soon it will be much more integrated into like business domains, into everyone's daily work. So they will expect to see something over there. And yeah, I really support Rand's opinion. So maybe some AI agents which do a combination of LLMs and rule-based systems. Those are going to take over some of the jobs or some of the tasks that you are doing currently.
Okay. Thank you. Panel, thank you very much. This ends this session. We're over time a little bit, but I want to thank the panel for sharing your insights on what the opportunities are and the challenges. No existential crisis yet, Seba. We'll cover that later. If you want to reach out to the panelists based on what you said, please do afterwards. For now, I want to thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thank you to our incredible panelists and moderator. We really appreciate you for sharing your knowledge on AI-powered data insights with us.